Hello, Patriots. I'm Lee Watts, and this is Patriot Point, your source for Kentucky news and analysis from a conservative, Christian, and common sense point of view. I remember back when I was a kid, there was a special sound that every kid growing up in the 70s and 80s knew. Yes, that meant something special is coming on. You would clear your calendar, you would circle it in the TV guide, and you make sure to be there for this special because it was only on once a year. And if you missed it, that was it, sucker. You couldn't download it. You didn't have a DVD to watch. You had to wait another full year for that special. Well, something special is going on at the Kentucky Capitol right now, and that is a special emergency session of the legislative body, the General Assembly. Normally during this time of year, they're not in session. They still will meet in committees, but they are not allowed to pass any new laws. But if the governor calls them into special session, then they are allowed to pass more new laws, but they can only pass laws about the topic the governor called them into special session for. Now, they are not required to pass new laws. If the governor calls them in and says, hey, I want you to do this, and they're like, we're not doing that, then they can just dismiss themselves without making new laws. But I think they will be doing that this time. Of course, it's been called in for the COVID mess. Andy Beshear, basically, he wants to have all of his powers back and just be able to run the state however he wants. Well, this is not going to happen. I mean, the legislature spent all this year saying we want to strip you of your powers, and we're not just about to give it back to you, especially when the courts just said, sure enough, you're stripped of all your powers, Andy. So they are trying to figure out what would be good steps and what is something we should not be doing. So here's some of the good and bad of ideas that are being kicked around. I'm recording this during the week and posting it very early Friday morning. Chances are the legislature is still going to be in session as you are watching this, if you're watching it when it first came out. So they may not even have voted on what they're going to be kicking around and what they're going to approve. If you want to contact your legislator before the vote is done, you can call them at 1-800-372-7181. And as I always say with this, be brief, be courteous, and ask them to call you back or write you back or email you back with what they will be doing. That is how to be effective. Let's talk about some of the good and bad things that they are considering. Here's one of the good things. They came right off the bat. They said, all right, listen, Andy, you are not allowed to issue statewide mask mandates. You are not allowed to close churches. You are not allowed to close businesses. And I applaud all that. Great things being kicked around. But here's one of the things I think is a dangerous idea that is also being debated during this special session, is saying, all right, we're not going to say the governor can issue all these different mandates, but instead they're given this idea, we'll just allow these same mandates via regulation or whatever to be imposed upon you by other people at the local level. So maybe your county judge executive or your mayor, they would have the authority to do this. This is a major problem. We shouldn't exchange one tyrant for a bunch of other tyrants all around this state. If it's wrong for the governor to do this, it's wrong for the mayor or the county judge executive or some governmental agency to issue basically these same mandates, and they just kind of reword it, and it will lead to a lot of confusion. So that would be a very bad idea. But it's an idea that is being debated during this special session. There are some very good ideas that are also being proposed. We have ideas that would protect you from the local mandates, that would protect you from employers that are violating your rights. First of all, you have the right to keep your medical information private, where we do have this law called HIPAA, which is your Health Information Policy Act, which says you do not have to reveal your personal medical condition to other people, such as your employer. And I think that we should actually be enforcing this, and these employers that are trying to mandate vaccines and mandate different things say, listen, you do not have the legal authority to be even asking me if I've had the shot or not. And it's about time we start enforcing this law, which was put into place to protect people's private medical information. Not even asking for a new law. Let's just obey the law that's already in place and actually enforce it and stop acting like that doesn't even exist. So those are some good things and those are some bad things. I tell you one of the reasons that we got another bad thing. One of the first things the legislature did is say, hey, listen, we are going to vote to extend the state of emergency. Now, and they did that up until the end of the year. Now, here's the reason why they did this. One of the reasons, among others, one of the big reasons that they've said they've done this is that way that would make Kentucky would still meet the requirements to receive all the federal funding for emergency relief because we're in a state of emergency. Here's a danger with this. As long as the leftists who are in control of the federal government, they're saying, as long as you got an emergency and you got all these emergency powers, we'll keep giving you money. The Bible tells us in Proverbs chapter 22 and verse number 7 that the borrower is servant unto the lender. And as long as the feds are saying, okay, as long as you meet these certain requirements, we'll keep giving you money. It always comes with strings, and it is advancing this leftist, overpowering, overreaching agenda. And the more that you get this money, the more that Kentucky becomes dependent upon it. Whenever you get businesses that are being given, hey, we're going to give you this as a stimulus. Whenever a business takes money from the government, you are no longer a private business. You are then, in a degree, dependent upon the government, and the business model will become dependent on that source of income. The more the government gives you, the more the government controls you. I tell you, a good idea instead would to say, listen, we're going to join the 24 other states that have said we declare this emergency over and we are going to start being self-sufficient. A good idea would be, listen, let's put Kentuckians back to work and let's start being more self-sufficient instead of depending upon the federal government for their bailouts, for their incentives. Let's learn to support ourselves. The more you support yourself, the more liberty that you have. So that's a little bit of a good idea. And as long as a good idea train has left the station, let me give you a few other good ideas as well. First of all, this special session here, every single day that the legislature is meeting in this special session cost you, the people of Kentucky, approximately $68,000 per day. That is not for the entire session. Special session started on Tuesday, probably will end later today on Friday. And if you just count those days up, that is going to be approximately $272,000 just to do this stuff. That's basically a little more than $250,000 to do this. So here would be a good idea, a better idea than what we have now. Currently, under Kentucky law, the legislature will meet on odd-numbered years for 30 working days. And then on even-numbered years, they meet for 60 working days. Now, these working days are all bunched up at the beginning of the year. And that means for about 9 months out of the year, they're not in session, they're not making laws. And that's the reason why sometimes, like here in September, the governor will call special session, cost Kentucky more than $270,000. So here would be a better idea on how to do this. Because, the good idea train has left the station. So let's jump on there and see what we can find. Here's a good idea. Take on like those even-numbered years where it's 60 working days. Instead of bunching them all up at the beginning, spread those out and just work Monday through Friday for 1 week every month. Now, by doing that, you've got 5 days per month times 12 months. That equals 60 working days, which means the legislature would be working 0 extra days. And they would be in session every single month. There wouldn't be a reason to call a special session to spend $250,000 or more. It would also do a lot of other things. And on those even-numbered years where they meet for 30 working days, well, then just meet in session every other month. Again, you'd be meeting throughout the year. It would save a whole lot of money for the Kentucky taxpayers because of no special session. It would allow them to keep out-of-control governors in check throughout the year instead of having to wait nearly a full year to do that, which is what happened to Kentucky last year. It would allow the legislators more time to read all of the bills. They're only meeting for the exact same number of working days as before, but now they have to read hundreds or even thousands of pages of bills all squished up together. If they spread these same number of working days throughout the year, it would give them more time, they could be more deliberate, and they would also be able to hear the input from their constituents, we the people, on what we think about these things. Because they'll have 300 new bills were passed into law this year, and that was all squished up in a month or two. What if we spread that out? It would give the people more time to hear about it. It would give the legislators more time to read about it, hear from the people, come up with ideas. It would save a lot of money. It would keep the governors in check, and it would be 0 extra working days. Now, this would require a constitutional amendment, but that is a good idea. And I'll just give you one more good idea just for free because I like it. Here is another good idea. This idea that a governor should be allowed to issue a pardon. This is a bad idea, and a good idea would be to get rid of that. Why should a governor have the authority to issue a pardon? The governor is not the person who is the victim of the crime. The governor didn't hear any evidence in the trial. The governor didn't get to see all the different situations that went on with the trial and all the evidence. They weren't the one wronged. And through the judicial system has said, listen, in a court of law with all of the evidence, the person has been found guilty. And then you would have a governor just say, I'm going to ignore the trial, all the money that people paid for the lawyers, the anguish they went through with the case, the victim, and I'm just going to let the person go even though they've been found guilty. A good idea would to remove this authority from governors. That is extending executive power into the judicial, which they should not do. Just like the special session is saying, listen, we are not going to let the executive extend its power over to the legislative. Each one of these groups should stay in their own sphere. That is something in the Constitution called the separation of powers, and we need to get back to that idea. So that's a little bit going on this week. Lastly, I want to mention this week's sponsor, and this week's sponsor is... It's me. Well, what do you know? This week's sponsor is me. I have written a book. Here it is. It is called War of the Realms. It is about a nation. I just made up a nation, and this nation was founded on freedom. It was founded on faith. But then one day they decide to leave their faith, and they wind up losing all of their freedom. Patriots become labeled as outlaws. Believers have to become fugitives. And it's a struggle to win their own country back. You can see where I'm going with this idea. I've taken a lot of the things the founding fathers said and put those in the lines of characters, taken a lot of situations you can find in the Bible, and put the characters in similar situations. So it's a lot of fun, it's a lot of adventure, and it has something important to say. I hope that you'll check it out. It is War of the Realms, Book 1. I'll put the link for it in the description of this video. You can get it on Amazon. And I also hired the people from Audible to turn it into an audiobook if you'd like to get that. So that's this week's sponsor. It's me. Here's the book, War of the Realms, and I hope you'll enjoy it. Well, until next week, I'm Lee Watts for Patriot Point, reminding you that liberty is not a spectator sport.